Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. British Columbians are working harder than ever, and this Premier tends to be raiding their paychecks in a desperate bid, quite frankly, to clean up his fiscal mess. 30% of all income tax dollars in this province are now going to pay interest on his overspending, not on health care, not on housing, not on mental health, just the Premier's reckless borrowing. Matter of fact, the Premier is so addicted to tax money, the average household is now paying $1,000 a year just to service his debt. In other words, instead of giving a $1,000 tax rebate that he promised in the last election, he's actually hit them with a $1,000 a year bill just to pay interest. So why is this Premier forcing families who are struggling day after day just to put food on the table and to put heat in their house? Why is he handing billions, quite frankly, to banks instead of actually having fiscal responsibility in this province?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you to the member opposite for the question. When we began our work in 2017, we inherited a deficit of hospitals, of schools, and we began building. Honourable Chair, this work is important to British Columbians. We have built infrastructure in this province that was very much lacking. We continue to have reasonable debt metrics, 5 cents on every dollar. When you compare our debt metrics to other provinces, you can see we compare favourably to Ontario, to Quebec, and to Canada. It is true that we have work to do to bring our deficit down, and we are determined to do that work.
Opposition House Leader, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, $5.1 billion is going to be spent on interest now and growing. But here's the interesting stat that maybe the Finance Minister has ignored. Almost half of the amount of deficit or the amount of debt that is being taken on by this government, by the Premier and his government, is actually being deficits, not the capital that this Finance Minister just talked about. $32 billion in deficits versus $65 billion in debt. That is irresponsible spending. That is not investing in the hospitals and in the roads and in the schools that we need in British Columbia. Debt servicing now eats up, like I say, 30% of what personal income taxes come in. So, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, it's the Premier who should be fighting, the affordability crisis we have. Instead, he is the affordability crisis that British Columbians are facing. So why is this Premier more interested in spending dollars on banking instead of actually putting dollars back in people's pockets so that they can afford to have food on the table?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Here's a news flash to the Leader of the Opposition. When you build hospitals, you've got to put people in them to run them. When you build
Members,
schools,
members, shh.
When you build schools,
Members will come to order now. Members.
When you build schools, we put teachers in them to teach. And, Honourable Speaker, it is very important that we continue to do the work to make things affordable for British Columbians, and we have been. Reducing costs like rent and ICBC, the biggest reduction any province has experienced in the past 2 years. We've kept ICBC rates low, saving drivers $500 per year.
Members.
Free prescription, birth control, childcare fees cut in half. I could go on, and the member knows it. And he also knows that he would make different decisions, and British Columbians would feel it.
Member for Kamloops Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's like the Finance Minister is unaware of all the closed ERs, ICUs, and maternity wards in BC currently that we seem to be under. Mr. Speaker, the Premier promised to cancel U.S. contracts and buy BC and buy Canadian, and after almost a year, his own ministry admits they have no list, no tracking, no data, and actually no idea what was actually, if anything, cancelled. Now, Ontario, they actually passed a real law to protect local jobs, while this Premier can't even tell British Columbians if a single contract has actually changed, let alone be cancelled. So why did this Premier make such a big show of Buy BC and Bill 7 and all the requirements this government needed when he didn't follow through on any of it?
Minister of Finance.
Wrong. We are following through on all of it. Since April, we've been reviewing all contracts with United States companies to decrease BC's dependence on goods and services from U.S. suppliers. Honourable Speaker,
Members.
we have to do this work carefully. If we took an approach that banned all U.S. suppliers, we would also lose BC jobs. We have to make sure we do this work and protect British Columbians. But this is very rich coming from the other side, who in fact stood up and wouldn't even take a stance against Trump's tariffs. Very rich coming from your side.
Kamloops Centre supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a snapshot in time we're never going to get back, but I digress. Mr. Speaker, this is the problem with this government. They made a big deal about Bill 7 in this House. They made a big deal about all the action they were taking, yet when they're pressed to actually deliver and show the results, they can't. And maybe they don't want to have an example of a Conservative government in Ontario taking action, so let's look at what the other NDP government in Canada has done in Manitoba in that same time frame. Not review the actions they have actually taken. They formally banned U.S. companies from government contracts. They did not renew 2 electrical contracts to export 500 megawatts to the U.S. And you know what they did instead, Mr. Speaker, to support other Canadians as part of Confederation? They redirected 50 megawatts of that to none of it, and they have plans for the remainder to go to Saskatchewan. That's an NDP government that's actually taking action, not just providing performative words. So again, when will this government actually provide a detailed list of all of the U.S. contracts that have been cancelled or not renewed or changed or anything other than the typical we're reviewing it but actually taking action?
Minister of Finance.
Wrong again. We are taking action. We are taking action. New procurements starting in May exclude U.S. suppliers from bidding on these contracts unless an exemption has been granted because it's a critical good or service, or would lose
Members.
BC jobs, or would lose BC jobs. We've got many examples already. An RFP for the province's fleet management specifically excludes U.S. workers. A maintenance contract for government facilities is now with CBRE instead. Data hosting and data service centres with ESIT Advanced Solutions employing BC and Canadian workers. This member would have us pull our workers off of doing this important transition and have them making lists. No, we're doing the work.
Member, before I recognize the next member, I want to remind all members that using of electronic devices during question period is not permitted. House Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everybody knows smoking kills. So many years ago, the government imposed a sin tax on tobacco sales to discourage smoking, increase government revenues, and relieve pressure on our health system. The second quarterly report on the government's finances revealed that revenue from tobacco taxes is lower than projected, in part because fewer people are smoking. This is good news. The tax is working. It's discouraging an unwanted behavior. Meanwhile, since this government cancelled the carbon tax, people are burning more gas. Revenue from the fuel tax is up due to increased consumption. My question is to the Minister of Finance. BC's projected deficit is $11.2 billion. Would have been 25% smaller if we'd kept the consumer carbon tax. What is her government doing to get us back in the black now, not in 10 years?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member opposite for the question. We stepped back from the carbon tax to provide affordability for British Columbians. This is a particularly difficult time for many British Columbians, and we're seeing it become more challenging. And I know the other side loses their mind whenever we point out that Trump's tariffs are having an impact, but they are, and they're having an impact in people's lives, Honourable Speaker. We will continue to do the important work on bringing our deficit down. We're doing it in a number of different ways. We have a full efficiency review underway. We've put in a hiring freeze. We already know through 96% through attrition, we have 1,085 less workers working for us now. We have to, at the same time, be deeply driven on growing our economy, and that is the work that we are so focused on this side of the House. The other side of the House hasn't been with us on this, Honourable Speaker, but we must continue to do this absolutely integral work.
Member supplemental. Supplemental member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The quarterly report also shows BC's getting less money from natural resources. For the past 175 years, British Columbia has been a resource colony. We've been told that the only way we can make money is by digging up coal, cutting down trees, and shipping fracked gas to Asia. But the quarterly report shows mining revenue is down thanks to higher extraction costs and lower coal prices. Stumpage revenue is down because the trees in the valley bottoms have been clear-cut. Pine beetle and forest fires are devastating the rest. My question to the Minister of Finance: in the spring budget, this government promised that BC would become the innovation hub for the world. Why then has the government doubled down on an economic plan based on old world thinking?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member opposite for the question. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, Honourable Speaker. It is important to continue to invest in our resource sector, but as the member rightly knows, there is incredible things happening in our innovation sector, Honourable Speaker. We are seeing growth in that sector. We are seeing growth in our technology space. We're winning awards for clean technology, Honourable Speaker, and we've attracted Web Summit, which is the Olympics of tech, in its second year in British Columbia, highlighting the incredible work that is happening in our technology sector, which continues to grow with the support of this side of the House.
House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, if you want your child to join a terrorist group, bring them to Vancouver. Vancouver's school board is reportedly promoting Antifa, the comic book. Antifa is the left-wing terrorist organization responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of U.S. immigration officials, and unprovoked assaults on journalist Andy Ngo and child protection advocate Billboard Chris. Mr. Speaker, it shouldn't be hard to condemn terrorists, whoever they are. I'll do it again. I condemn Antifa, and I condemn neo-Nazis. Now it's the minister's turn. My question is for the Minister of Education. Will she condemn the promotion of Antifa comic books in BC schools?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And absolutely, there's no question that we want to ensure that kids in schools have access to age-appropriate, safe resources. I want every single person in this House to know that there are already policies in place. They exist in the schools all across the province to ensure that resources are age-appropriate. We will be updating this policy guidance for boards, as there was some confusion around existing policy. But I want the member to know that the policies exist, the safeties and security is there in place. And as always, if there's an issue with a particular resource, talk to the teacher, talk to the principal, talk to the school district who hold these policies. Thank you.
Member supplemental.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what terrorist organizations do is they demonize people with opposing views to incite hatred and lay the groundwork for violence. Antifa, the comic book, teaches children that the Freedom Convoy was a, quote, flashpoint for fascism. Mr. Speaker, according to ISPO's polling, 46% of Canadians sympathize with the Freedom Convoy. That's close to 20 million Canadians. So, Mr. Speaker, my question for the minister, does she agree with Antifa terrorists that 20 million Canadians who support the freedom movement are fascists?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and to the member again, you know, these kind of questions that are designed to divide the House and cause fear and anxiety amongst kids and parents are just not helpful. There are policies in place to ensure that there are age-appropriate materials in schools. If the member has an issue with a particular resource or any parent, they are able to contact the teacher, the principal, the school district to have that resource reviewed. There are policies in place to ensure review of these resources. So to the member, I just really wish the member would spend the time and energy in supporting kids in schools, supporting the work that teachers and districts are doing to keep our kids safe from this kind of dangerous rhetoric. Member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister and Premier of Alberta... I'm not on. The Prime Minister and the Premier of Alberta have established and signed a Memorandum of Understanding regarding a new northern pipeline. The Premier of British Columbia has not provided support for that pipeline. Would the Premier, and he's flip-flopping on his support, will the Premier tell us which route, if it's not the northern route, he would actually support for a new pipeline in British Columbia?
Minister of Energy.
Well, Honourable Speaker, there is no pipeline. There is no proponent. There is no route. There is no plan. There's no possibility of anyone, because shippers pay through tolls for pipelines, no possibility of anyone paying for the pipeline except for the public, Honourable Speaker. Something we have made very clear, Honourable Speaker. Our government's job, British Columbia's job, is to defend British Columbia, Honourable Speaker. And we are doing that by promoting projects here in British Columbia that will bring real wealth to people. Not fantasy projects, not memorandums of understanding. They don't create anything, Honourable Speaker. What we bring here are real projects, like the North Coast Transmission Line, which the member opposes, Honourable Speaker. Like 18 proposals we brought forward in February, 12 of which the Honourable Member proposes. We support economic development. That's why BC is leading Canada in projects and leading Canada in economic growth.
Member for Prince George Mackenzie.
Well, once again, more political spin for the minister responsible for no more pipelines in this province. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's tariffs just wiped out 1,000 jobs at Algoma Steel in Ontario. Their CEO was here in the building last week warning the Premier that this would happen. And while Ontario is fighting to protect its industries, the BC NDP is doing the opposite, building ferries offshore, imposing policies gutting sawmill jobs, and opposing pipelines, essentially killing every opportunity for steelworkers in this province. Pipelines are manufactured by Canadian steelworkers and manufactured and built by Canadian workers. While Trump is attacking jobs for working families from the outside, why is this Premier helping him from the inside?
Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, we want to do what we can to support steelworkers across the country. I can share with the member that BC is leading that conversation. We've created a table with major companies in British Columbia, met with the steel producers that came here from Ontario and Quebec, and my message to them was clear. We do want to support their work, but in order to do that, we need to have a conversation at a national level about how that will work. We support the need for supporting steel in Ontario and Quebec, but we need to figure out how it's going to be transported here. We need to figure out how the costs are disproportionately impacting British Columbia from that steel coming across the country. And we want to figure out how we can scale up manufacturing opportunities here in British Columbia. So we will continue to work with the federal government. We want to support steel, whether it's in Ontario, whether it's in Quebec, whether it's Alberta, and we want to see more capacity be built here in British Columbia as well.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's approximately 95,000 horses in British Columbia. Over 20,000 households are involved in the equine industry. The equine industry generates an estimated $740 million in economic activity annually and creates over 7,200 full-time jobs. This government sat back and watched Fraser Downs and Cloverdale close 4 months ago. Now, historic Hastings Park in Vancouver is about to meet its demise as this government has pulled $10 million in casino revenue from this iconic racetrack. Thousands of people will be affected, Mr. Speaker, both economically and emotionally around the province. Breeders, hay suppliers, feed suppliers, truckers, veterinarians, trainers, and all of their staff. Mr. Speaker, why is this government willing to sit back and watch agriculture in BC continue to die by 1,000 cuts? And will this minister reinstate the gaming funding to Hastings Park Racetrack?
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My thanks to the member opposite for the question. Horse racing has a long history in our province, and in recent years, it has faced very significant challenges. There have been a decline in the number of races, the number of wagers, breeding activity, and industry revenue. These have been declining for a number of years. The horse racing industry presented a plan to the province that included a request for significant additional funding to maintain its viability. And so the ministry conducted a review of the industry that included an economic impact assessment and engagement with the industry, track operators, the BC Lottery Corporation, as well as the cities of Vancouver and Surrey. While there are economic benefits that you noted, we found really significant concerns with the financial sustainability and ongoing viability of the industry. This was a very difficult decision, and I do acknowledge that it has impacts on the industry and on workers in our province.
Member for Surrey Serpentine River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The federal government scrapped the carbon tax, then BC did. The Fed scrapped EV mandates, then BC rolled back. And now they're scrapping the federal speculation and vacancy tax. As usual, BC is late to the party, doubling down and hiking theirs in 2026. Why is this government still trapping seniors, single parents, and families who are never supposed to be targets of this tax?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. Massive differences between the tax the federal government had and the very successful tax that we have in British Columbia, which has been successful in bringing in tens of thousands of homes for people into circulation. It's shocking. It's shocking to me that a representative from Surrey, in fact, could stand against a tax that is providing homes for British Columbians.
Member for Fraser-Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This summer, thousands of hectares of timber burnt in Fraser-Nicola and Caribou-Chilcotin. Millions are ready to salvage, but they're stuck waiting for permits, while millions in usable timber rots because this government appears inept to manage the issue. Alberta processes burn wood salvage permits within 6 months. Here, it takes so long, the wood becomes worthless. Will the minister commit today to issue the required permits? And if not, why not?
Minister of Forests.
Mr. Speaker, the member should get his facts straight. We have been moving quickly after the 2025 wildfire season to look at working with industry, to work at working with the sector, to try.
Members.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite
had a fire not too long from where he represents, the Mine Creek fire. We're actually salvaging from that fire, and that fire occurred in 2025. There are tons of examples across the province where we are having difficulty moving economically viable fibre. We are looking to address those challenges, but I can assure the member that we are working quickly and efficiently with industry to move on wildfire salvage opportunities that create jobs for contractors and create jobs in our pulp mills.
Member for Caribou-Chilcotin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the Forest Minister should get his facts straight. The Elephant Hill fire burned in 2017. His ministry started to clean that up effectively last summer. So that is not entirely correct with respect to permitting in this province. It still remains a massive challenge, and it's one of the things that we could be repairing in this province immediately to help this industry. Recently announced closures of Drax and West Fraser have wiped out hundreds of jobs. The latest devastating news in this decimated forest industry. The downstream fallout has been immediate. 27 families turning to local food banks at Christmas, and applications continue to climb. Loaves and Fishes and 100 Mile Food Bank are overwhelmed and pleading for emergency support at the absolute worst time of the year. Mr. Speaker, we just had emergency meetings with the Premier and many of the ministers last week with respect to the challenges in my community. Mr. Speaker, what immediate actions has the Premier and this government taken to support Caribou-Chilcotin?
Minister of Forests.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. My heart goes out to the member and his constituents. I've had a number of conversations with the member opposite about the challenging circumstances of 100 Mile and Williams Lake. I've spoken to both of the mayors. I've spoken to the union president of the 100 Mile facility. And I want them to know, as I want the member opposite to know, that we're going to stand with his constituents. We're going to work very hard to support them during these very difficult times. We have been working hard on this side of the House to get the federal government to the table because of the leadership that our Premier has shown, not only in fighting for forestry workers in British Columbia, but fighting for forestry workers from coast to coast to coast. We saw $2 billion invested in our forest sector. We are going to continue our efforts to ensure that we are supplementing that with supports from the province, focused on making sure that workers are supported, we're protecting their paychecks, and we're building a stronger forest sector so no worker is put in this position ever again.
Member for Richmond Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minister said 2 weeks ago that the government would repeal the 2026 EV mandates. 2026 models are already on the sales floor for a few months. We have 3 days left in this session and have committed to working with this government to scrap the EV mandate in 1 day, like we did with the carbon tax. And yet, we don't have legislation on the floor of the House to do this. Car dealers have warned massive job losses if this mandate stays in place. Why is this government prepared to leave workers and public in the limbo for a few more months instead of dealing with this before this session ends?
Minister of Energy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. BC, of course, is leading Canada in EV sales because of much of the work that has been done by new car dealers in our province, Honourable Speaker. With respect to 2026, all manufacturers are in compliance now, and if they're not in compliance, they would have a waiver for 2026. We'll be bringing forward legislation in the spring 2026 session to deal towards the future of EVs in BC. But I have to say, Honourable Speaker, that EVs in BC, which benefit our economy, which use electricity we make in BC, Honourable Speaker, benefit everybody in BC who can have access to them. We have to address and continue to address issues of affordability, and we're doing that, and continue to ensure that there's a charging network in BC to ensure that more people can have access to this extraordinary opportunity.
Member for Abbotsford South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this NDP government is pushing on families a drug use, supportive housing site beside Abbotsford Traditional School in Martins Park. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, 75% of women fleeing violence can't find safe housing, and are being forced back to shelters, or worse, back to the very same abusers, often with their children. Mr. Speaker, if this government insists on taking away a park, why not make this project exclusively for women and children escaping violent partners? Or does this minister think women and children just don't matter?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, of course, object to the way the question's framed, but let me take the issues seriously as they are. We have been working closely with the City of Abbotsford. I want to give credit to the Mayor and Council in Abbotsford who have been doing an incredible job on delivering housing for people in their community, including supportive housing for those who most need it. We've been in conversation with the Mayor and Council about this particular site and how it can meet the needs of folks who are vulnerable in the community, and more to do on that front as well. I want to speak to the work. My dude, this is your time. I'm happy for you to waste it. But I want to speak seriously to the work that this government has done on the Women's Transition Fund, and taking seriously, as I do, as all of us do on this side of the House, the challenges that women face in 2018.
Members, please continue.
2018, we created the Women's Transition Fund with $734 million as an investment over 10 years to build and operate 1,500 transitional housing, second stage housing, and long-term housing spaces for women and children fleeing violence. As part of this province's Homes for People plan, we've invested a further $1.2 million over the next 2 years to double that work to 3,000 homes for women who need them. We take this issue seriously. We will continue to do that work.
The bell ends the question period.